Hi, my name is Tomasz Pożytek, and today I would like to show you a small hack that I was recently trying to work on. So in previous videos about Pipeline Pipelines, I showed you how you can perform a delegated deployment using either an Entra ID registered application, so the service principal, or how you can do a delegated deployment. Delegated deployment using the stage owner inside the pipeline. And today, or in this video, I would like to show you as well how you can make a deployment using a service account, the application account, because using a stage owner, you are not able to actually deploy solutions which were contained in the OAuth connection references, or the connection references to OAuth connections. Meanwhile, with the application account or the service principal, you are able to do so. However, when that connection is being created, it's being created on behalf of the specific application account. Now, what if you'd like to perform this deployment, but still have the connections created using a specific user's connections? Like, I would like Stefan to be able to deploy this solution to prod, but I would like them to, this solution once deployed, to use John's connection, references to John connections. And that is not possible as of today, at least not possible to perform directly from the UI. Also, it is not possible to override environment variables that are set by the user who is initiating the deployment. So imagine that you do have a deployment that is always a specific pipeline, but you know that there should always be some very certain environment variable values provided for each of the variables that are within the solution. And then if a user is performing a deployment, they can actually set the values of these environment variables on their own, and sometimes they can make a mistake. So what if you would be able, like in DevOps Pipelines, to simply set a configuration file that defines what connections should be used and what values for environment variables should be used, and then make a deployment using this configuration file? Well, it's not really out of box possible, but it is possible. Let me show you how to do that. First things first. So here I have the deployment with Pipelines app, so the one that I've been using in the previous video. And there is a stage called dev to prod. Now in this stage, once you open it, you have the history of all the instances which were triggered. Now there is one that has succeeded. Actually, and within its information, you can obviously find the whole history. So like what were the steps taken. Deployment settings. This is the JSON that I want to put your attention to. So this is a JSON that contains both the information about the environment variable values that were provided by the user, but as well connection IDs for the connection references. And now this deployment settings JSON, it is being created in advance. So there is like no place in a flow that you can, or in the interface of the pipelines that you can actually set it so that it's always used as in DevOps pipelines. But you can use your Power Automate that you can use for approvals to amend this or to change this deployment settings JSON before it is actually used. So let's. I think I've made some manipulation to it, so it doesn't work now. Okay, so let's take it. That is the JSON that it is present. So this is the same JSON as you may find in or to be used by DevOps. So first you have the array of environment variables, then you have an array of the connection references. Each contains its logical name, each contains the ID to the environment, to the connection on the target environment, and also the connector ID, which again stays unchanged. So the only thing that we may want to update is the value of the environment variables, and as well the connection ID for the connection references. Okay, so let's do it. Let's do it. First step is let's just take a look, or maybe not. I'll again reuse that pipeline that is that flow that I've used in my previous video to approve deployment using the service principle. And I want to make some changes before the deployment actually takes place. So first, and then again, it's up to you whether you first want to read that configuration file and then change it. So you can obviously read the deployment settings JSON from the deployment data, and using add property, update property, or remove property from the expressions from the expressions group, you can manipulate it. Yep. So you could say, hey, give me, for example, a parse JSON action where I want to provide this string, the deployment settings JSON, as an input value. Get deployment request details. That will be here, and you can find it under the name that is called Deployment Settings JSON, right? So in here it is parsing because in Dataverse record it is encoded. And then let's generate the schema. Okay, so that's the schema. But that is really not important. So on the other hand, I'll use just a compose action where I will author a new deployment settings JSON, right? So this one here, that will be later used by the deployment, by the pipelines, right? So now I need to update a row, update a row, update a row, update a row. There it is. Yep. So this is the deployment stage runs, right? So that's the table, and then we need to provide ID of the row, which is the deployment stage ID, I think. Deployment stage 1. Okay, so that's the ID. And later under the show advanced options, and here you need to provide this deployment settings JSON, so simply the output of the compose. And that is that easy. And also, well, I would like to change something in here. So let's say that instead of prod, I will say, all right, and also I want to use John Researcher's connection on the prod from the prod environment. So for that, I'll navigate to Power Automate portal, and I'll navigate to Connections, and I'll grab one of the SharePoint connections that John has. Oh, he has just one, actually. And here is the connection name. That's actually the ID that I have to grab. Okay, so that I am able to simply update. All right. Oops, there is a mistake. I ate a quote. All right. So that should be good to go. Now, John will do as well one more thing. So being on the prod environment, he must get read of a specific solution which we deployed in the previous demo. oh, sorry. I copied an ID of a connection from Pipeline's host environment. So let's do it again. I have to copy that obviously from the prod environment, because this is where this solution is going to be deployed, and this is where I want to get that ID. So once again, I go here to connections on the prod environment, double check the prod environment. And, oh, all right, and there is one that is connected. So let's see it. Yep, and this is the ID I have to grab and update in here. All right. Yeah, that should work. And also, as mentioned, I need to get rid of that managed solution that has been deployed just some time ago, so that Stefan would be able to deploy it again. All right, so with that, I can switch back now to Stefan's account, and Stefan is going now to slightly update the flow so that the flow will contain a SharePoint action, so that it will actually use an OAuth connection. I can't get used to this new designer. Let's say list something, get lists. Yeah, that's okay. Get lists is just enough. Let's use this side. And here, this flow uses that connection reference. That is all good. All right. So that I can save. And close. And also I need to add all the required objects, right? So this should add me the connection reference, which is not present in the solution. Right, so there is a connection reference, and the connection reference is used by Stefan. So now Stefan would like to perform a deployment using the Pipelines app. Now, as you remember from my previous video, or if you haven't watched it, I highly encourage you to do so. If John would like to make a deployment using, if Stefan would like to make a deployment using John's account, then the deployment would fail because the delegated deployment using stage owner as a context cannot be used for solutions which contain connection references to connections using OAuth authentication. However, with the application accounts, the service principal, you can do that. So Stefan will now use the deployment with Pipelines app and will simply initiate the deployment. Now, obviously, all the steps of the deployment are going to remain the same. So like for Stefan, it is totally invisible that there is something going on behind the scenes, like that the environment variable value is going to be updated, or that the connection reference is going to be switched to other than service principals. So he just goes through the whole deployment process. Let's set it prod again. Ouch. Yep, and deploy. So now, as all times before, Power Platform Pipelines is exporting the artifact. So, two artifacts in the end. So the managed and unmanaged zip files with all the objects of the solution. And once this export is done, this is when the approval steps in. So let's wait a moment and then let's move on. Okay, the deployment is now pending the approval. Therefore, I'll switch back to Teams. And there it is. So there is again the request from Stefan. Please approve the deployment, some cool solution. So ready? Let's approve it and let's see what will happen. So now once the approval is done, Stefan can see or will see that the status of this deployment will change from pending to, well, to in progress. And done. So the deployment is successful. Stefan is still unable to navigate to prod environment. So then I will navigate to prod environment with my account, or maybe first with John's account. Okay. So that's John. That is John's account, prod environment. Let me just refresh this view. Yep, so the solution is in here. Now, there are like two things. So first, the owner of this solution is still the pipelines deployment account. So still the service principal. And honestly, I haven't yet found a way to change it because actually the owner is the account on which behalf the connection is set up, which changes the status of the deployment in the flow that is triggered once a deployment is requested. And this information is not taken as per my knowledge from the Dataverse record. So I can't really update anything in Dataverse to tell pipelines, hey, for this deployment, the owner is not pipeline's deployment account, but it's John Researcher. But on the other hand, if I create this action on behalf of John Researcher, if I use his connection to authenticate this action that changes the status, then as you remember from my previous video, the deployment will fail because the solution contains OAuth action, OAuth connection reference. So this is a similar situation as you would find or you would face using DevOps pipelines. In there, you are as well able to manipulate with the Deployment Settings JSON, but you are unable to change the owner of the deployed solution or owner of the objects in the deployed solution. That is the same, unfortunately, issue. However, once I navigate to connection references, I cannot edit it. So let me go back to default solution and I'll just show you values of these objects. So if I just filter them out to SOCO, first let's check the variable. So you can see that its value is now, this is set by the process. So that's the same value as I defined for the deployment settings JSON in my flow. And now the connection. Yep, you can see the connection is using the John Researcher's connection, not the service principal one, as it would if the solution was deployed really just following the out-of-box features from the delegated deployment using service principal. Okay, so with that, I would like to make a short summary. So like as said, using this small hack of manipulating deployment settings JSON, you are able to accomplish a similar functionality as you have in DevOps Pipelines so that you can prepare the deployment settings JSON on your own, where you can provide values for the environment variables, where you can provide connection IDs for the connections you want to use in a target environment, and then to use this deployment settings JSON to actually steer how the deployment is done on the target environment. So in the end, you will be able to override whatever user wrote during the deployment, during the initiation of the deployment, and as well you would be able to define what connections should be used for the connection references present in a solution, other than service principal connection. So that is quite useful in all these scenarios. You would need this kind of flexibility. You are unable to set other account as the owner of the objects in the solution, other than the one that is authenticating actions in the flow, in the pipelines environment, which stands behind the approval of the deployment. Because as said, if you don't use service principal that has unlimited permissions for the whole Power Platform, but you use a specific user's account, then you will face the same situation as if you were using delegated deployments using stage owner. That is just impossible to make a deployment of a solution using auth connections inside. So that is all from myself. I hope that this small hack that what I just showed you will be useful, and you will be able to use it in your own deployments. If you have any questions, as usual, just ask them below in the comments. And as always, please subscribe. Please leave your rate. Set the thumbs up for the video, and follow my channel to check out what's coming up next. Thank you very much for watching, and until the next time. Bye bye.